Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Kembali lagi ke latihan IELTS online bareng Fikri. Kita lanjut lagi latihannya teman-teman ya. Dan terima kasih dengan banyaknya permintaan juga ketika live TikTok. Banyak teman-teman yang mungkin tertarik untuk menemani saya latihan IELTS online secara live di TikTok ya. Tapi gini, masalahnya hasil rekaman dari live TikTok itu sekarang udah beda ya. Kalau dulu-dulu itu ukuran dari rekaman live TikTok itu masih besar. Kualitasnya bagus, ya kan? Kita kalau video YouTube itu kan pengennya yang kualitasnya bagus. Nah, biasanya kalau dulu awal-awal saya nyoba pakai live TikTok ini, live TikTok Studio, itu ukurannya ya di atas ya sekitar 1 gigaan gitulah untuk durasi live 1 jam lebih. Nah, ini sekarang ukurannya udah turun nih. Jadi nggak tahu kenapa yang biasanya 1 giga sekarang cuma paling mentok itu 200 MB. Kan kecil banget ya. Kalau untuk kualitas YouTube itu kan masih jauh ya. Nah itu jadi nantilah saya cari formulanya dulu kalau memang ada waktu dan kesempatan kita latihan IELTS online bersama secara live ya, live TikTok studio. Nah ini sementara saya pakai rekaman dulu. Jadi kalau di live TikTok Studio itu kita bisa rekaman offline dan ukurannya masih lumayan ya, masih masih besar, masih kualitas yang bagus. Biasanya kalau untuk 1 jam rekaman itu 1 gigaan, kayak kayak kemarin-kemarin ya. Oke, sekarang kita latihan listening. Saya masih ada PR untuk latihan speaking dan writing ya teman-teman. Ini aduh masih kondisi mood masih bermasalah. Ini sementara kita reading, listening. Ini aja reading sama listening belum sampai 7,5. Ya Allah, ya kan? Jadi perlu pembiasaan dan ini saya sudah menyesuaikan diri untuk setting meja ya. Karena ini yang penting ya, kita kenyamanan mengerjakan tes itu kan tergantung bagaimana kondisi dari meja, terus laptop dan seterusnya untuk bisa mengerjakan tes ini. Nah, ini saya sudah mejanya sudah sesuai dengan tinggi ini ya, tinggi laptop dan seterusnya, jadi sudah pas. Terus nggak perlu menunduk. Kemarin itu mejanya ya meja inilah ya kurang bagus, jadi saya harus menunduk. Kalau ini enggak, ini udah pas. Nah gitu nanti eh, saya kasih testimoni kira-kira udah nyaman nggak? Karena kita nanti tesnya kan 3 jam, 3 jaman listening, reading, writing itu. Kalau speaking kan di hari sebelumnya dan langsung selesai gitu. Nah ini yang 3 skill ini yang berturut-turut. Jadi kalau nggak nyaman kita nggak enak ya. Ini aja masih saya belum ada waktu untuk ngerjakan 3 skill berturut-turut. Kira-kira pusing apa enggak ini? Nah, ini sementara satu-satu dulu lah ya. Karena ini kalau 3 jam itu memang betul-betul harus menyiapkan waktu yang pas ya. Nantilah ya. Sementara per skill dulu. Kita balik lagi ke listening teman-teman. Oke, kita coba ya. Oh ya, satu lagi tipsnya. Kalau mengerjakan IELTS online nanti ya karena 3 jam itu kayaknya posisi laptop itu harus dalam keadaan tercas ya. Full ya pokoknya jangan dicopot casnya itu karena kita kadang nggak sadar ketika mengerjakan ternyata baterai sudah mau habis. Nah, itu pengalaman saya kemarin-kemarin. Jadi nggak usah dicopot meskipun sudah full biar kita aman lah. Ya minimal khusus untuk ketika mengerjakan tes IELTS online ini biarkan aja tertancap ininya kabel casnya. Itu ya tipsnya ya. Oke, kita coba. Bismillah, listening mock test yang kesekian dengan waktu yang ditentukan ya, 40 menit. Oke, bismillah.
This recording is copyright. Test 21. In the IELTS test, you hear some recordings and you answer questions on them. You have time to read the instructions and questions and check your work. All recordings are played once only. Now look at Section 1. Section 1. You will hear a conversation between a police officer and a member of the public at a police station. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5.
Tahun, nama kota. Ingat ya, satu kata atau nomor. Paspor.
Now we begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, as the recording is not played twice. Listen carefully to the conversation and answer questions 1 to 5.
Good afternoon, madam. How can I help you?
Oh, hello. I think my passport has been stolen and the embassy told me to register it with you.
Sorry to hear that, madam. Let me find a form to take some details. Okay, here we are. So, I need to take some information about you and what's happened, and then I can give you a crime reference number to give to your embassy. Okay. Right, let's start with the information on the passport. What's your surname?
It's Ms. Walsh. That's Walsh.
And your first name?
Chloe.
Okay, Ms. Walsh. And can I take your date of birth?
Yes, it's the 5th of July, 1987.
Okay, I've got that here. And next, I'm going to need to take your place of birth.
I was born in Ireland.
I need the city or town, madam.
Oh, it was the capital, Dublin.
And do you know your passport number?
I have a copy of it somewhere. Oh, yes, here you go. It's 323682.
That's 323682. Great. Now I need to take some contact details in case we need to contact you or if we find the passport. Can I take a phone number?
Yes, my mobile number is 07780 367 021.
So that's 07780 367 012.
No, it ends 021.
Oh, okay. And your email address?
It's chloe.walsh@email.com.
And finally, can I take your address, please?
It's 97 East Street in Brighton, and the postcode is BN12SE.
Before the conversation continues, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen carefully and answer questions 6 to 10.
Okay, now I need to make a few notes about what happened. You say that your passport was stolen?
Well, I'm not sure. It was either stolen from my pocket or I dropped it and lost it.
Okay, madam. Well, you need to report it with us whether it was lost or stolen. You said that it was in your pocket.
That's right. I kept it in the pocket of my jacket because I thought it would be safer there.
Okay, well, there has been a number of people reporting pickpocketing recently, so maybe it was stolen from your pocket. When was this?
It was last Wednesday.
So that's Wednesday, the 21st of July.
That's right.
And do you know where it's happened?
Well, I'm not sure exactly. In the afternoon, I went to meet a friend, and I know I had it with me then because I felt it in my pocket before I left.
And where did you meet your friend?
In Green Cafe on the High Street.
And what did you do after that?
So I went for a walk along the high street and was going to walk home, but it started raining, so I decided to get the bus home. I think I got home around 4:30, and it was then that I realised I didn't have my passport with me anymore.
Was it a crowded bus?
Yes, the bus stop and the bus were very crowded.
Okay, that's often when pickpocketing happens on busy buses and trains.
Really? I didn't notice anything.
Yes, you often don't. They're very good at what they do. Okay, madam, that's all the information that I need. I'll give you a crime reference number now, which they might ask you for when you get your new passport. The number is A13590.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Sure, it's A13590.
Okay, well, thanks for your help.
No problem, madam. Have a nice day.
That is the end of section 1. You will now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 2. Section 2. You will hear an instructor giving a talk before a kayaking trip. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 14. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 14.
Hello everybody, welcome to South Down Kayaking. I'm going to be your instructor today. Can I just ask if anybody has been kayaking before? No? Okay, great, so everybody's a beginner. Today, we're going to do a special type of kayaking called sit-on-top kayaking. Right, let me first give you some safety information and then I'll tell you a little more about what we're going to do today. You can see all the boats over there. They are kind of the same as canoes. They are made of the same plastic material and they are a similar shape. The biggest difference is that with kayaks, you sit on top of the boat, whereas you get into a canoe and your legs are covered in the boat. This difference has both good points and bad. Many people say it makes it easier to get on the boat and you also feel more free as your legs aren't trapped in the boat. It's also so much easier to get into the water in the beginning. But when lots of beginners start, one thing they don't like is that they feel more unstable. It does feel just like you're sat on the water and there's nothing to stop you falling in. Let's talk about falling in. It will happen. At some point today, you're going to fall off your boat and into the water. So you need to know what to do. Now, it is quite difficult to get back on the boat in deep water. So I don't suggest you try that today. Just stay by your boat and we'll come and help you. Avoid trying to swim to the land, or you may get hit by a boat. Another thing I need to mention is the clothing we're wearing. Obviously, we all need life jackets and helmets on when we're in the water, but I notice some of you are wearing heavy trousers and coats. Now, you might think they'll keep you warm in the boat, but when you do fall in, they are very heavy and will be difficult to move around in. So you will need to change into lightweight clothes.
Before the talk continues, you have some time to look at the questions 15 to 20. Now listen carefully and answer questions 15 to 20.
Okay, we're nearly ready to go, but I'm just going to show you on this map what route we're going to take today. So, we're in the boathouse here on the south side of the river at the left of the map. Can you see that? Right next to us is a great fish restaurant, which many people choose to go back to later. It's the perfect place to enjoy an evening meal with a lovely view of the wood across the river at sunset. Now, once we get onto our boats, we will be going along the river up to the top to where it gets wider. You can see that we'll be going under 2 bridges. Soon after going under the first one, we will approach the first of 2 bends in the river. At this point, we'll pass the old rivermaster's house on the right, where the rivermaster used to collect money from people using the river. This is my favourite of the many historical buildings on this stretch of the river. Not long after this, we will get to the second bend and the impressive stone bridge, which, by the way, is nearly 1,000 years old. We will stop here briefly to let you take a picture of it and the old mill which stands on the far bank just beyond the bridge. Continuing further down, the river will begin to open up. On the left, you will see the car park and cafe, but we will actually stop for tea and a snack at the picnic spot on the island in the middle. It's a really nice place to stop and just be surrounded by nature. By the time we finally do get off the river, you may want to make use of the toilet facilities, which you can find behind the cafe. And I nearly forgot. I should also mention that those of you who will be camping overnight can either leave your kayaks at the car park and walk to the campsite, or paddle back down the river in them. You'll find it just before you get to the footbridge on the north bank beside the wood. If you are staying overnight at the campsite, you can use this bridge to get over to the restaurant. Okay, shall we go and see if we can get on these boats?
That is the end of section 2. You will now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 3. Section 3. You will hear a discussion between 2 students about a psychology project. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 23. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 23.
Hi, Greg. Are you ready to get started on this end-of-year psychology project?
Hi, Sophie. I think so. I spent all yesterday evening doing background reading. We've such a lot to think about today. Anyway, I've got a cup of coffee and a free afternoon. Let's see what we can do.
Okay, great. So last time we spoke, if I remember correctly, we decided to look into the psychology of smell.
Yes, that's right. We both agreed it's a fascinating area, but that we wanted to be 100% confident before talking to Professor Ingram about it. So, are you still happy with this topic?
Yes, well, honestly, I just couldn't stop reading about it when I got home. At first I felt that there'd already been quite a lot of research carried out on the relationship between the olfactory system and the human mind. So I wondered whether perhaps we were in danger of just repeating old experiments. However, I then thought that it's really such a broad area of study that we could just choose a new angle.
I had a similar feeling. Plus, we can easily move to another approach if Professor Ingram doesn't like this one. Anyway, it seems that the effect of smell on memory and perceptions of physical attraction have been well researched already, but there's been much less study into, for example, its effects on decision-making.
Indeed, which is a mystery to me, since it seems to be so relevant and applicable to everyday life. I mean, so much of our life nowadays involves making critical decisions, often within a consumer context. You'd think there would be corporate interest in this kind of study.
You're absolutely right. Well, that certainly should make us more likely to be approved for funding if we decide to extend the study.
True. And if our findings are significant, there will definitely be scope for that. Okay, should we get something on paper that we can take to Professor Ingram?
Before the conversation continues, you have some time to look at questions 24 to 30. Now listen carefully and answer questions 24 to 30.
So now that we're sure about the topic, let's get some ideas down into the project plan. Firstly, what research are we building from?
Well, several of the studies I looked at showed quite clearly that stimuli to the olfactory system can influence how humans behave. That sounds like quite a solid basis for us to work from.
Yeah, and we can make reference to anecdotal evidence too, such as the effect the smell of roasted coffee has on house viewers, or so they say. Okay, great. So the aim of the study is to determine if the addition of certain fragrances to an environment affects human judgment. So how are we going to test that?
Well, we have to create a situation in which the participants need to make simple decisions in the presence and absence of fragrance. A simple two-group experiment seems appropriate.
Okay, so what fragrances shall we choose? And what decision? These are the key variables.
You're right. Let's start with the fragrances. How many do we need? Should we have one positive, one neutral, and one negative?
I think we want to start simple and build on it if we notice a pattern. So how about one pleasant-smelling aroma?
Yes, okay. We can do a Google search to find one of the most popular ones. What about the decision the participants are to come to?
Well, we want to gather quantitative yes, no, or numerical data from 1 to 10, which we can analyze easily.
Well, with the two-group method, we could have the groups in separate rooms, one which acts as a control and has a completely neutral odour, the other into which we introduce the fragrance.
Yes, however, we must be careful to ensure the potency of the odor is kept consistent in this room for all participants. Otherwise, our data won't be valid.
Okay, good point. Now, about the method. Apart from the presence or absence of aroma, the method should be exactly the same. The participant enters, sits down, and what next?
Well, perhaps we can give a simple informal 2-minute presentation about a new product to them.
Sure, and we can ask them to complete a form with a series of questions to determine their response to the product. For example, on a scale of 1 to 5, how likely would you be to buy this product?
Something like that. We can discuss details later anyway. Okay, what about sample size?
2 groups of 12 should be enough to confirm significance, considering that this is really just a pilot. What are our selection criteria?
Well, we just want a broad range of backgrounds and ages, really. I'll advertise the experiment on the department portal. Oh, and we'll have to be careful not to get any participants with allergies, for obvious reasons.
Okay, good point. Right, should we go and take this to Professor Ingram for approval? We can ask him about possible rooms to use too.
All right, let's go.
That is the end of section 3. You will now have half a minute to check your answers.
Cepet banget ngomongnya. Aduh. Gitu. Ya, biasanya part 3 ini, part 3 4 itu ngomong cepat banget. Ini aduh, udahlah.
Now turn to section 4. Section 4. You will hear part of a lecture about a medieval weapon. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
To continue our lecture series on medieval warfare, I shall be telling you today about a weapon known as liquid fire, sea fire, or sticky fire in medieval times. It is better known nowadays by the term Greek fire. I'd like to start with a very brief historical recap. You may recall from your school history lessons that when Rome fell in 476 AD, the lights went out, as it were, all over the western part of the former Roman Empire, and what were known as the Dark Ages began. What you may not recall, or may not have been taught, is that the Eastern Roman Empire, also known to us as Byzantium, or the Byzantine Empire, continued to flourish for nearly 1,000 years after the fall of Rome. During those years, Byzantium was a centre of scholarship and kept much of the knowledge from ancient Greece and Rome alive. For most of this period, the Byzantine Empire was also at war, fighting to protect its borders and provinces against Islamic expansion in the south and east and attackers from the north. Greek fire was one of the weapons that kept these attackers at bay. So, what was Greek fire? What was it made of, and when was it invented? Sadly, I cannot give you definitive answers to these questions. We do know that it was a terrifying weapon that proved particularly effective in sea battles, as it could burn on water and had the property of sticking to whatever it touched. Some sources suggest that it ignited when it came into contact with water, but there is no general consensus on this point. There is more agreement on what substances could be used to put it out, namely sand or strong vinegar. The American military historian Alex Rowland has suggested that stale urine may also have been used to douse Greek fire. The origins and composition of Greek fire are equally hotly debated, if I may make a small pun here. The most widely accepted story is that first related by the Byzantine chronicler Theophanes. He said that the recipe for Greek fire was brought to Constantinople, the capital of the empire, by Kallinikos, a native of what is now Syria. The same historian recounts the first recorded use of Greek fire, which took place in 672 AD. At this time, Arab ships were blockading Constantinople. The Byzantine fleet deployed Greek fire to devastating effect, and the siege was lifted. Another topic of much speculation is what exactly this ferocious compound was made of. The contemporary accounts are unreliable and vague, and some of them may have described other forms of incendiary weapons. Modern scholarship has largely come to the conclusion that one of the main components may have been naphtha, which is a form of distilled petroleum. As the Byzantine Empire at that time controlled many of the areas where oil can be found very close to the surface of the earth, they would certainly have had access to large quantities of the raw material needed to make naphtha. From various sources, it seems likely that resin, possibly pine resin, was added to the mix, thus giving the compound its sticky quality. Other possible ingredients are sulfur and quicklime. The main reason that so little is known about the chemical composition of Greek fire is that the recipe was an extremely closely guarded state secret. It would appear that the secret was so well hidden that it ultimately got lost, because there are few records of the Byzantine Empire deploying it after the end of the 12th century. However, there is an aspect of this weapon, about which there is agreement. Greek fire was deployed in 3 methods. The first was as a form of hand grenade. Earthenware pots were filled with the fire and thrown at the enemy. They would shatter on impact with the ground and release their contents. A deployment method that was also used at the time for less deadly incendiary compounds. At sea, the fire was released by means of large siphons, which released jets of fire at high speed and pressure. Eyewitness accounts speak of a terrifying noise that accompanied an attack of this type. The third method was by means of portable, handheld flamethrowers. If I could just draw your attention to the screen, you will see a...
That is the end of section 4. You will now have half a minute to check your answers.
Agak lost teman-teman ya. Ya sudahlah. Yang ini saya nggak yakin. Yang ini juga, ini yakin sih yang ini petroleum, pine, sulfur, secret, 3 methods ini nggak yakin, jet fire, high pressure fire.
That is the end of listening test 21.
Apa gitu ya? High pressure jet. Oh iya. Kayaknya jet nih. Greek fire used as a kind of hand grenade. Apa tadi? Udahlah. Oke, kita finish saja dulu teman-teman. Sebenarnya masih ada waktu ya. Ini bagus sih untuk lihat-lihat. Dan ini terutama saya tadi mau bahas ini ya. Yang part 2 terutama yang map. Map ini agak repot. Kalau di website ini kan kita bisa zoom in, zoom out ya. Jadi bisa diperkecil, bisa diperbesar. Jadi kita ketika mengerjakan map ini bisa gambar mapnya itu satu layar gitu. Kalau kayak yang biasa ini yang 100%, ini kan setengah-setengah. Jadi gambarannya kurang penuh. Sementara map itu kan kita butuh gambaran penuh. Jadi harus diperkecil. Nggak tahu kalau nanti dengan software yang disediakan oleh penyedia tes, kira-kira lebih jelas apa enggak ya. Ini pun hanya gambaran mungkin ya. Kemungkinan lebih mudah nanti yang di softwarenya ya. Nah, gitulah teman-teman. Coba saya yakinkan ini masih. Oke. Oke. Bismillah, mudah-mudahan ini udah meningkat lagi 7 atau 7,5. Jadi lumayan lah. Bismillah ya. Yuk, finish test. Yes. Wah, alhamdulillah ini. Wah, betul semua. Alhamdulillah. Jacket betul, Wednesday betul, cafe betul. Tadi ada yang cafe itu ada tambahan Greenfield atau apa gitu ya. Pas betul. Terus apa ini reference number juga udah betul. Yang angka 0 dengan O itu harus hati-hati teman-teman. Karena nanti kedeteknya mungkin kalau O kita tulis 0 itu jadinya kedeteknya angka. Padahal O-nya O huruf ya. Ini harus hati-hati. Jadi A13597O, O huruf ya, bukan 0. Alhamdulillah betul semua. Dublin. Ini terutama untuk nama kota atau negara Anda harus punya background knowledge ya tentang nama-nama negara, nama-nama ibu kota negara ya, nama-nama kota juga di seluruh dunia. Jadi biar nggak bingung karena nanti Dublin Anda nggak tahu tulisan Dublin itu seperti apa, takutnya Anda nggak bisa jawab dengan benar ya. Ini pertama kalinya saya betul satu part 1. Tadi jacket itu juga hampir salah. Jadi saya kira stolen. Passport was in her stolen jacket. Kan nggak pas ya. Jadi saku itu kan saku apa? Apakah saku baju, saku celana, saku. Jadi pakaian yang dimaksud gitu ya. Jadi saku pada pakaian apa? Gitu. Nah, tadi saya kedengaran jacket. Oke, part 2 alhamdulillah juga cuma satu yang salah. Nah, ini padahal saya yakin benar ya. Yang 11 itu udah yakin benar. Jadi saya pakai metode eliminasi. Tadi kan dia bilangnya eh apa the kayaks and canoes are made from the same atau similar materials gitu. Jadi kan ini salah yang B. Terus yang C itu juga they have similar shapes. Jadi bentuknya sama. Nah, B, C itu jelas salah. Terus yang A itu saya kurang jelas sebenarnya, tapi karena B, C itu udah jelas salah, jadi saya pilih yang A. Terus ini tadi kata-katanya bukan less secure, dia bilangnya apa ya, uncomfortable atau gimana gitu. Tapi yang A itu jelas salah, bukan masalah getting into the water takes longer atau apa. Terus sitting position is not as comfortable itu juga. Jadi saya tadi ada kata-kata yang mirip dengan less secure gitu. Terus yang 13 jelas, yang A itu tidak boleh ya. Jadi nggak get back onto the boat as quickly as possible nggak ada. Terus swim to the shore itu nggak boleh ya. Nanti takutnya kena apa kayak orang lain dan seterusnya ya. Ini yang paling pas ya disuruh tunggu di air biar nanti di rescue oleh petugas gitu. Nah ini kok salah ya. Padahal kalau nggak salah masalah dengan apa baju yang dipakai orang-orang atau peserta itu adalah jangan pakai baju yang tebal-tebal. Kenapa? Karena kalau tebal nanti lebih berat kan. Kalau kita sampai jatuh ke dalam air gitu. Jadi cari yang apa persiapkan baju yang lebih ringan gitu kan. Harusnya yang C. Iya, bukan ini kan safety equipment. Aduh, harusnya yang C. Ya, karena bajunya tebal, akhirnya menyusahkan peserta untuk berenang, ya kan? Jadi artinya apa? Bajunya susah untuk dibuat berenang. Dan ini pertama kalinya saya betul semua ini yang map ya. Alhamdulillah. Tadi saya pikir-pikir lagi. Dan mungkin juga ketika saya mengerjakan map ini, saya sambil pakai logika gitu ya. Jadi saya kira-kira tadi restoran itu on the right side of the boat house gitu-gitu ya. On our right side gitu. Di sebelah berarti kan yang F itu sebelah kanan. Nggak mungkin yang G, nggak mungkin yang A. Dan titik 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 mula perjalanan itu harus jelas ya teman-teman ya. Dan biasanya ya kita cari ini ya pintu masuk entrance atau apa kalau ini kayaking atau naik perahu kan berarti ada ininya ya pelabuhannya lah gitu istilahnya. Ini istilahnya the boat house. Nah, dari sini terus jalan. Kita ikutan aja kata-kata dia. Dan ini biasanya urut 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 gitu ya. Urut nanti di sebelah kanan, berarti ini F. Terus nanti melewati apa tadi dia bilangnya jembatan gitulah ya. Terus tetap dia bilangnya sebelah kanan. Nah, sebelah kanan ya ini G ya. Nah, nggak mungkin yang B. Karena kita nanti kan belok ke kanan gitu kan. Berarti kan sebelah kanannya yang di bawahnya. Bukan yang B ya. Dan seterusnya. Alhamdulillah betul semua. Betul semua. Betul hampir semua ya salah satu. Jadi tadi, aduh, saya nggak baca apa they are not wearing the correct safety equipment. Bukan itu masalahnya, tapi masalahnya bajunya sulit untuk digunakan berenang. Nah ini yang salah, aduh, ini susah ya. Yang part apa part 3 ini cepet banget. Ya nggak apa-apa lah. Ini yang betul. Oh, personal interest. The topic areas flexibility. Salah semua. Potential practical applications, guaranteed corporate funding. Ya, dia mereka cuma ngomong ada kemungkinan funding dari perusahaannya. Aduh, salah semua ternyata. Apa? Terus human judgment betul ternyata. Yang ini saya udah kelewatan ya, nggak tahu yang mana nih. Karena ini rumus lagi kan participant. Coba kita lihat. Tadi bilang, we both agreed it's a fascinating area. Berarti apa? Sophie mentions, I just couldn't stop reading about it. Oh, ini berarti personal interest ya. Oke, nggak apa. It's really such a broad area of study. that we could just choose a new angle and Greg agrees that I had a similar feeling. Plus, we can easily move to another approach if Professor Ingram doesn't like this one. Yeah, the topic area is flexibility, itu ya. Karena broad area berarti flexible. Terus ini ya, yang betul adalah it seems to be so relevant and applicable. Oh, ada kata-kata applicable, saya nggak. Berarti yang betul adalah to everyday life, yang potential practical applications. Oke. Saya mengakui itu apa? I admit my mistakes. Oke, kalau ini udah betul ya, human judgment. Tadi agak lost tadi ya. Yang mana ini? Dia ngomongin yang mana ini? Tapi udahlah. Yang ini 25 jelas salah. Key variables ya. These are the key variables. Tadi nggak dengar kata-kata key ya. Nah, udahlah. Terus considered to be pleasant. Ini juga saya udah nggak ini. Numerical scale. Jadi harus lebih tenang mungkin ya, lebih tenang terus fokus dan ini betul-betul dibaca dulu ya kalimat-kalimat yang ada di sekitar blank ya. Ensure bukan use tapi potensi. Fragrance potensi. Ini kok salah? Product presentation. Ini juga salah. Sample ya. Sample needs to be sufficient to establish. Sample size. Allergies juga salah. Oh, L-nya kurang 1. Allergies itu L-nya 2 ternyata. Ya, apa ini banyak ternyata yang salah. Ini berarti udah 10 ini kayaknya. Berapa ya? Skornya kayaknya 6,5 nih. 6. Oh, ini banyak juga nih salah. Aduh, ini nggak ada yang betul lagi. In English, it is also known as Byzantium. Invaluable learning. Nggak tahu saya. Oke, ini saya juga udah lost ya. Yang ini jelas, yang B saya yakin. Kalau yang C ini salah ya. Betul yang B. With its neighbors. Petroleum betul, pine betul, sulfur betul, secret betul. Ini saya memang udah lewat. Pots ya. Earthenware pots. Jadi pots saja udah betul. Jadi ini salah. Oh, pakai S. Oke deh. Coba kita lihat ya nilainya berapa. Result history guys. Oh ya 6,5. Berapa? 6 ya. Cuma 6. Ya ada penurunan lagi ya. Ya naik dikit lah. Oh enggak. Kemarin 6,5, sekarang 6. Ya. Masih 6, 6,5 ini. Harus ditingkatkan lagi minimal 7 lah. Caranya. Oke, nggak apa-apa. Sementara itu untuk hari ini sampai ketemu lagi. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.